Hi, I'm Ann Hansen from Bare Naked Wools. I'm here today to show you a whip stitch join, which is part of a series of finishing steps for our blanket statement projects. Now, in previous videos from last month, we talked about blocking squares and adding a single crochet edge all the way around. After the edge is added to each square or each block, it's important to press them lightly again or steam them again so that the edges lay flat. You can see here that it's kind of bumpy and irregular. And here are a couple that I pressed once again just before starting my whip stitch, and you can see that these are going to be a little bit easier to work with because they're flat. Now first I have to cut a length of yarn to work with, because in this case I don't have a long enough piece attached to my blocks. But if you did leave a long yarn tail, you could use that to sew this join. To get through the whole join, you probably need a piece that's about twice as long as the edge you're sewing up. I'm just going to cut a fresh piece for myself here. In this case, I'm demonstrating, and so I don't want to be flinging my arms all over the place, so my piece may not be quite as long as you would want for yourself. And after I join it, I'm going to just weave it in through the back of the work to get started. Kind of a little review of the weaving we did last month. So I just weave my threaded tapestry needle through the stitches in the back, and I'm going to weave it right through the edging stitches where it will match and be best hidden. I'm going to pull that through, and then I'm going to take a quick stitch in the edge of my crochet edge just to secure it so it doesn't pull out. Now, the point of the whip stitch is to sew a very flat join that is appealing from both sides, so it doesn't detract from the piece if it's upside down. And really what you're doing here, as opposed to a mattress stitch seam where you want a seam allowance that will fold to the inside, here you're just butting two edges against each other and sewing them as flat as possible so that the fabric maintains the same density across. And that's going to be your best strategy for keeping the entire fabric of the blanket drapey and continuous. Alright, so I have my piece of yarn. Now I've switched to a brighter, lighter color yarn as a contrast, just so that you can see the stitches better. Normally you would want the yarn to match. You could use a contrasting yarn if you were very, very neat about your stitches and wanted to use that as an effect. Alright, so now I have my yarn attached to one side, and I'm going to be butting these two edges together and whipping around them, which is why we call it the whip stitch. So I'm going to pass the needle through the top of the opposite crochet stitch, and the single crochet has a little V along its top edge. It looks a little bit like a bind off, and you want to pick up both legs of each V. So I'm going to go back through that original one and pull through. And then I'm just going to go on to the next one. So the next stitch in that row, pick that up. I'm struggling a bit for a second here. And then to the other side and pick up that. And I'm just going to go from side to side all the way up. Very, very neatly and evenly. Now I'm choosing to do my stitches through the entire top edge of each. I kind of like that method. When I turn it over, I have a very neat, even stitch. You can also do a more hidden version of this stitch. Let me do one more. So you can do a little bit more hidden version, but it will only involve one edge, either the inside edge of your single crochets or the outside edge. We're going to do the inside edge. So it will show a little bit more on the back of the work and a little bit less on the front. So I'm going to switch gears here. So I'm going to dig down and pick up the inside edge of each block like this. Then when you lay it flat, that's a little bit more hidden, but you also get this kind of parallel edge. And on the back, it looks like this. So it looks similar to the other one on the back, but on the front it's slightly more hidden. It does have a little bit more ability to spread apart. This one is just a little firmer, if you can see what I mean. I'll do a few more so you can get the idea of that. Now, if you choose to pick your work up like this and sandwich it to make it a little bit easier to do the stitches, and it is a little bit easier to do the stitches that way, be sure periodically, like every inch or so, to lay it down and give it a little tug to keep it flat, or it may end up kind of pinched. And then every so often you want to just check and make sure that your seam is nice and stretchy. If your whip stitch join is too tight, it will create too firm of a spot here along every border, and it won't be as relaxed as the inside area of each square, and so again it will kind of distract from that feeling of a continuous fabric. So that's the whip stitch for joining your blocks. If you have any questions, you can visit our Ravelry group to discuss different approaches and problems or in the technique that you might have. Our members are very friendly and sharing about information. Now I'm going to show you how to do the whip stitch for your blanket strips if you are doing the strip till you're naked version of the blanket. Now I'm going to show you a whip stitch join for the blanket strips. This is a slightly different join because the blanket strips have a self edging of garter stitch along the sides and the bottom. And they only really need to be joined along the side edges. But you have to be a little bit careful about how you do it because the strips are different colors from each other, and you want your join to be very, very neat so that as the two colors come together, the stitches that join them don't detract from the clean edge that you have between each strip. And for this, I do recommend that you use the long tail that's attached to your strip. It's probably not going to be enough to extend through the whole strip, but it will get you part of the way. But it's good to, it cuts down on how many ends you weave in if you can use this for sewing. So I've got my attached piece, and I'm going to travel with the needle. I have it threaded to a tapestry needle, a blunt tapestry needle. I'm going to travel to the other side, to the other strip, and pick up at the bottom of the very first stitch. I'm going to pick up that cast on edge and carry the needle through it. And then I'm going to come back to the original edge and pick up that cast on edge as well. So I'm creating here a little kind of a figure 8 to connect them. And that's going to pull those edges together nice and neat so that you don't have any split corners. Now, notice these little bumps along the edge where the garter texture carries over to the edge. That's exactly where you're going to be making your stitches. So it's a little persnickety, but if you make them exactly in the same place as you go back and forth, this join will be almost undetectable. It will look like the garter stitch continues right from one strip to the other. So with my yarn, I'm going to now go to the dark edge and pick up on the very edge of the strip this bump that's sticking out. I'm going to pull my yarn through it gently and then come back to the first side and pick up the bump on that side. So I'm going to go back and forth, traveling back and forth to pick up. And then back over to the left side. It's kind of easier if you slide up from underneath to catch those bumps. It makes it a little bit easier to get your needle in the right place. So I'm just going from one side to the other and very carefully and very evenly stitching one row to the other. This is why it's so important to have the same number of rows in each strip. And likewise, even with the blocks, to have the same number of crochet stitches around each block. It just makes it very easy to get a nice even stitch. Now let's say that you know for sure that one strip is, and this is going to happen, some of the strips are 2 rows longer than the partner strip that they're being joined to. What you want to do in that case is to compensate, and you want to do this, far enough apart that it would not be detectable. You'll want to pick up on one side 2 stitches like this and marry it just to 1 stitch on the other side. So that's gonna bunch it up just a little bit right there and get rid of one of those extra rows. And then you can go back to doing it one-on-one for a while. We purposely set up the patterns so that they really match well within a couple of rows of each other. It's nice if you've marked your strips so that you know this as you get started with your stitching, you know where you're going to have to make, those kind of compensations. So that looks nice and even, and it almost looks like the garter stitch just becomes another color as your eye passes over that join. Now when you're all done, and again, as you go, make sure that you're keeping your stitches relaxed enough that they're stretchy. Not so relaxed that you see big gaps at the join, but just nice and relaxed so that they're not creating a rumpled look to the strips. When you're done, when you get all done weaving your end, and then go back to your iron with a wet cloth and lightly steam the join so that it lays nice and flat and so that it has nice drape to it. Likewise with the squares, you'll want to do the same thing. Steam the joins when you're done to get rid of any bumpiness that will happen or any kind of back and forth wavering of the seam that might happen just from getting distorted from stitching. Alright, so that's your guide to whip stitching your blocks and strips together in your blanket statement project. For more information about our blanket statement club or our other products, please visit the links below to our website and our Ravelry groups. Thank you.